So we started talking about the dreams and how he told them to his brothers and why he told them to the brothers. So what I want to do, I want to read the dreams quickly on page 201, and then we'll try to analyze the dreams and see what happened here and why did the brothers respond the way they did and the different responses to the different dreams. So we're going to begin with verse 6. Okay. Joseph dreamt a dream which he told to his brothers, and they hated him even more. A very interesting comment that I didn't realize till this morning is that here it says they hated even more, right? It doesn't yet say that the brothers were jealous until the second dream. The question is there a difference in hate and jealousy? And if there is a difference in hate and jealousy, why does the first dream trigger hate or additional hate, and only the second dream trigger jealousy? So I never even realized that this is an issue. But thanks to my book here, I found that there's a collection of commentaries just on this subtlety. Every subtlety you can really, and it's psychological insight, right? What is hate? What is jealousy? It certainly can overlap, but then it's not exactly the same thing. Okay, so we'll get to that later, hopefully. Okay, so the first thing is he says, listen to the dream. What does he say? Verse 7. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the middle of the field, when behold, my sheaf arose and also remained standing. Then behold, your sheaves gathered around and bow down to my sheaf. So that's simple, right? Everybody has a bundle of grain, and their bundles bow down to his bundle. The brothers said to him, would you then reign over us? Would you then dominate us? And they hated him even more because of his dreams and because of his talk. No mention of jealousy, right? So here they hated him even more, right? So they hated him. Torah says already 3 times they hated him. They hated him earlier. When we introduce this dream, it says, verse 5, it says, and they hated him even more. And when we finish this dream, again, it says, they hated him even more. So there's a lot of hate that we see. Okay. Verse 9, he dreamt another dream and related it to his brothers. And he said, look, I dreamt another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. And he related to his father and to his brothers. His father scolded him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamt? Are we to come, I and your mother and your brothers, to bow down to you to the ground? So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. I read this verse probably, it's not like sort of boasting, it just means that I'm old. Probably read this verse 60, 70, 90 times, 100 times. Never noticed that subtlety of jealousy versus hate. It's just interesting. You can read the same text so many times and not pick up. So we'll address that in a minute. But before that, we have other issues to deal with. And that is, there's so many issues to deal with. I don't even know where to start. Let's start with a simple issue, and we'll sort of bring up a few issues and tie them all together. Why does, in the second dream, does he tell the father? Verse 11, right? Verse 11, he had a second dream. Stars, 11 stars, sun and the moon, bow down to me. Verse 11, it says, after the second dream, not verse 11, I can't even see straight, that vodka with the apple is deceiving. You drink a little bit, it's very good, but yeah. We had a bar mitzvah celebration this morning, so it's the verses. You'll see that everything will become straight. I'll stop. Now I'm seeing 2. I'll drink another one. We'll go back to seeing 1. Yeah, everything will go back into things. So it's not verse 11, it's verse 10. And he related it to his father and to his brothers. Why does he relate to his father? The first one, the first dream, what does it say? He told his brothers, right? Dream 1, it says, verse 5, dream 1, Joseph dreamt a dream which he told his brothers. And they told him, and they hated him even more. So the first dream he tells his brothers, the second dream he tells his father as well. This is a relatively easy question to answer, but that's going to lead us to the jealousy question. Right? What's the difference? The difference is very simple. The first dream, who is the subject of the first dream? What is he dreaming about? We're binding bundles. Who's binding bundles? Just the brothers. So why would you tell your father? He's not a subject in the dream. The content of the first dream is the brothers are about to meet. So who do you tell it to? You tell it to the brothers. What's the content of the second dream? The 11 stars plus the sun and the moon. Sun and the moon is father and mother. Okay? So then he goes, tells his father, because he needs his father to help him interpret. What am I seeing here? It's about the father, so he went to the father. Now the father, we talked about this last week. The father, on one hand, believes the dreams. That's what the verse says explicitly. And the verse 11. His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Shamar is to guard. English translation is guarding. It means keeping it in mind. Rashi says that in biblical Hebrew, the word shamar, lishmor, is to anticipate. When you're waiting for something to happen, you're also guarding. That he brings multiple verses in the Bible. We're guarding would mean not just remembering, but anticipating. In any case, so the father definitely believes it, but his father's smart enough to know that the brothers are jealous. So what does he say? He says, impossible. What are you talking about? Your mother is going to come. Your mother's already dead. Because Rachel died. So what does it mean that the moon? So you're saying the moon? So then we already discussed that the father himself understood what we discussed in the JLI about the dreams, that even dreams that are true have some things that are not true. That's what the Talmud says. It's impossible to have a dream. Not impossible. There are no dreams without some nonsense. So even if the dream as a whole is true, there is some nonsense, and the father assumes that at least the part of the mother is nonsense. Some people say also the part of the father is nonsense, but that's another story. It could be that this dream was different and this dream had no nonsense because it was a prophecy. And in this case, Rashi says that the mother could have been the woman who raised him as a mother, which is Bilhah, his mother's maidservant, the other one of Jacob's wives. But the point here is, we understand why he's running to the father in the second dream, because the second dream involves the father. Okay, step one. Now let's go back to and talk about the jealousy question. The brothers. So you took the JLI, so you know this. So dreams could either be a prophecy or dreams could be the product of one's own imagination. And usually it depends on, was I thinking about this matter or not? So if you're thinking about something during the day, then you're going to dream about it at night. There's a big discussion in the Talmud, a very big discussion. In the Talmud, there's an expression in the Talmud to do something that's completely irrational. So for example, there's a Talmudic question, and they give an answer, but the answer is very far-fetched, very difficult to accept it. So the Talmud tells this guy who offers this answer, the rabbis tell him, are you from Pumbedita, which is a city in Babylonia? They were probably from Sura, which is the one yeshiva, and this is the rival school, Harvard, Yale. So this you had Sura, Nahardal, Pumbedita. Are you from Pumbedita? With a stick, where they push an elephant through the eye of a needle, hole of a needle? You can't do that. You can't, that's the expression of, it's not logical what you're talking about. This answer, to say the Mishnah is talking about this case, whatever the question is, that was an expression. In Pumbedita, they tried to stick an elephant through an eye of a needle. And this imagery with the Talmud is fascinated by it. So the Talmud basically says you could dream about anything, and the dream is not that rational. But you're not gonna dream of an elephant in a hole of a needle, going through a hole of a needle, because it's more than just irrational. It's not even something that the imagination could conceive of. So you would never dream about that. That's one statement in Talmud. Other places in the Talmud, it says you would dream about an elephant going through the eye of a needle. So we have a contradiction. What do you do? So the Talmud says, well, if you think about it during the day, you'll dream it at night. If you sat and you tried to do this mental image in your mind during the day, it's possible you dream about it at night. So the Talmud was very into the idea that if you dream about something during the day, it's going to be reflected in your dreams at night. Okay. You're Joseph's brothers, and the brother comes to you, and you think he's arrogant, and you think he wants to be the leader. And Joseph comes to you and says, all you brothers are going to bow to me. That's my dream. Now, do they think it's prophecy? Of course not. This thing is a joke. This guy running around thinks he's on top of the world, thinks all his brothers should bow to him all day. That's what he's thinking about. So at night, that's what he dreams of. They did not think it's true. There's no reason to be jealous. There was no shadow of a doubt in their mind that this is not true. It's just a product of his own thoughts during the day. His conscious thoughts would create the dream. Okay, fine. So they're not jealous. What's to be jealous? They hated him because it just shows he's arrogant. So there's hate, but there's no jealousy. Then he comes to the second dream. Second dream, father bows down to me. That is already a different story. They didn't think that the brother, that's sort of so irrational. They didn't think that Joseph was thinking about that. Joseph is thinking his father would bow to him. That's not rational. Now they start getting worried. Maybe this is a true dream. Maybe this is prophecy, because they didn't think it's a product of his mind, because he wouldn't think about this. Who would think about this? So now it's Vayikanu Oto. There is jealousy, because now they start saying maybe there's something to it. But the first dream, they didn't think about it. They weren't even jealous. They didn't think it's true. They just thought they just thought it's a product of his ego. So they hate it. Second dream, jealousy. Jealousy because they say, oh, he never thought about this. He didn't think his father and mother were going to bow down to him. That's not rational to think about. Even Joseph wouldn't think about that. Okay, so why is it happening? Oh, maybe it's a prophecy. Now they start getting nervous. Now they start getting jealous that he has a quality that they do not have. That is one interpretation. I want to say two other things, and then I want to come back to this question. Because for the second answer, you have to go the long route about the dreams.
May I ask you
Yes.
in this context, would you equate jealousy with it?
Yeah. And envy is jealousy is envy.
So aren't we taught that envy can be, not necessarily, but can be a prelude to theft?
It could be, yes. Yes, and in this case, even almost attempted murder, right? In other words, Maimonides talks about this, that in the Ten Commandments, it says don't covet, don't be jealous. No, I wouldn't think it's like one of the most important commandments to put in the Ten Commandments. Okay, so you're jealous. So you're not the most spiritual person, but what's so terrible about jealousy? So Maimonides says jealousy could lead to theft, could lead to murder, could lead to adultery, like it's the beginning, but it could lead to many different places. On the other hand, the Talmud says that jealousy, kinat sofrim, jealousy among scholars increases wisdom. In other words, the idea, the ambition to outperform somebody else, even in the realm of wisdom or science, so that actually advances. So jealousy by itself is not so terrible. The question is, what are you jealous of? If you're jealous of sort of materialism, then it's not, for a wise person, it's not valuable enough to be jealous of.
Well, I think in the context of the scholar, we're talking more about admiration.
But so I'm sure there's different shades of the word, because jealousy could be two words. Jealousy could be, I'm upset that you have it, and I don't really want it. I'm just upset that you have it. That's one form of jealousy, right? You're happy and I'm not happy. I don't want you to be happy. I don't even want what you have. But whatever you make me happy, you're happy. I'm already upset that you're happy. Do I want what you have? No, I don't care for it, right? You're having l'chaim. I don't like l'chaim. I don't want it, but you're happy. That makes me upset. So that's one form of jealousy. Another form of jealousy would be, I want what you want. So one form of jealousy is I want what you want. I can't get it, so I'm going to hate you. One form of jealousy is I want what you want, so I'm going to improve myself to the point that I could also have what you have, not take away yours. So I think it's a general word that could have all different shades. But to be fair, that the Hebrew word that the Talmud uses is kina, is the same word. They were jealous of him. Jealousy of scholars increases wisdom. So I agree that there are different shades of jealousy, and they're not all the same, but it is the same word. So somehow they're all related. Talking about jealousy, I have an interpretation of jealousy, of do not covet. I think I haven't seen it written, but I think it's a nice one, so I'm going to say it anyway. The verse says in the Ten Commandments, it's a very strange verse. It says, let's read it, because I can't remember by heart after the apple. The verse says like this, 10th commandment. The verse says, you shall not covet your fellow's house. You shall not covet your fellow's wife, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, nor anything that belongs to your fellow. Now, this is a very strange way of putting it, because if I were writing it, I would just say, don't covet. Shouldn't want something you don't have. Here you see so many times your fellows, how many times is your fellow's wife, your fellow's house, wife. Even in English, his donkey, avdoi, his donkey, right? We're talking about his, doesn't say don't covet donkeys. It's constantly going back to his fellow. So every word, covet your fellow's house, shall not covet your fellow's wife, his maidservant, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, nor anything that belongs to your fellow. 7 times it says the word or implication that it's his.
Is covet the same as jealous?
Not exactly. One is
In
not
Hebrew.
exactly. It's a question of what covet is. Maimonides believes covet is a feeling that it's a good question. It's a good question, but let's keep that aside for a second. So I think like this. My interpretation is like this. I shouldn't covet your car. Let's say you have what do you have? A Lamborghini. A Honda. A Lamborghini. Yeah, I have a Lamborghini. I shouldn't covet your Lamborghini.
Honda, I won't covet.
You have a Lamborghini. So I shouldn't covet your Lamborghini. Now, if it happens to be that if you drive down Putnam Avenue, you see the Lamborghini shop. My son used to be very involved in cars, very into cars. So he knows what all the shops like, which car you can buy where. I drive by the Lamborghini shop and I say, I wish I had this Lamborghini. Is that a problem? I'm so jealous. I want this Lamborghini. Is that a problem? So I think this verse says no. The verse says, if I drive by your driveway and I see the Lamborghini in my friend's driveway and I say, I want that, oh, that's a violation of the commandment. It says, don't covet your fellow's Lamborghini. But it doesn't say don't covet a Lamborghini. Now, it could be I'm wrong. It could be I'm wrong. But I think this is what the verse is saying. I think the verse is saying like this. So the verse is saying basically, the way I see it is like this. If I feel I need a Lamborghini to make me a happy person and to help me fulfill my purpose in life, Gesundheit, you should want a Lamborghini, and you should actually want a Lamborghini, and you should enjoy it, and you should go earn money and make a lot of money and buy it and spend it and enjoy it. Nothing wrong with that. Why did I think of this? Because somebody told me that today I think he has many Ferraris, but at that point he used to drive by the Ferrari shop and say, I really want that. And eventually he got one and he got many. But in any case, that's nothing wrong with that. If I drive by your Lamborghini, your house, I see the Lamborghini, I say, I want your Lamborghini. What am I saying? What I'm really saying is that I want it because you want it. Makes you happy, so I think it's going to make me happy. That is wrong. Just because you need it doesn't mean I need it. Right? If I want it because you have it, if I want this house because it's your house, that is a problem. You should decide what you need to be able to live a wholesome lifestyle and pursue and go get what you want. You want to be ambitious. You want to buy a yacht. But if I say I want a yacht because my neighbor has a yacht, that means you're deciding what is right for you based on what somebody else has. That is not healthy for you. Steve disagrees. It's only a theory. You could disagree.
Well, I mean, if two people hold similar values, I don't think there's anything wrong with their desires coinciding.
Yes, but if I want it because you have it, that's what he emphasizes. I want it because you have it. That would be unhealthy. It's a spiritual perspective. If you go to your spiritual advisor and tell him and say, I think I need a yacht. Okay, get a yacht. I think I need a yacht because my neighbor has a yacht. I don't know. That means you better go back and do some soul searching. I'm not so sure the yacht's going to make you happy. I'm not so sure the yacht is what you need. You probably need a more of a focus on your inner life. But if you tell me I need a yacht, fine. Today, go get a yacht. But if you come and you say I need a yacht because my neighbor has a yacht, that shows that you're not really living your own life, right? You're pursuing your happiness based on what makes other people happy. That's no way to spend money, any money, especially not a lot of money on a Lamborghini or a yacht, right? But the point here is, I think that by economy, so I'm saying jealousy. Jealousy is what? I'm jealous. I need what you have. No, you need what you have, and I need what I have. Now, if I think that for me, to be able to do what I need to do, I need to achieve A, B, and C, or get A, B, and C, fine, isn't today, go do it, right? But if I say I have it, I'm jealous. Jealousy to me sounds like I'm jealous of it because you have it. And that's one shade of jealousy. I'm not saying it's the only one, but that's just the theory. Okay, let's go back to our discussion.
Can I just add
please.
something? So both of you don't have it. But if I'm trying to get the yacht because I know he wants it and I want to be first to have it, how would you define that in terms of the jealousy bit?
So I think that's not a healthy space to be in.
Of course.
But but it's interesting that the way the commandment, the 10 Commandments was phrased. I'm not talking about the parameters of the law. Maybe the parameters are broader, but the specific case that the 10 Commandments offers does not include that case. The case is I walk by, I see it's my neighbor's house. wife, animal, and or anything that belongs to your friend. It means it belongs to him. I should not desire something that belongs to somebody. You could have just said, don't desire anything you don't have. It's not what it says. It's not what it says. You want to desire, you want to buy, you want to be the, I don't know, today, you want to, I don't know, billionaires want strange things. You want a trip to outer space, right? You can't be a billionaire today without having a space company. You want to go to space, fine, because today to go to space. But I'm saying, I want it because he has it. Oh, then that's a problem. In other words, it just shows that you don't really need it. And it may not be good for you. It may not be advancing your spiritual life.
No, what I was trying to say
Yeah.
is, if I can create envy, then I create jealousy. So if I want,
You're saying competition. We both want to get to the goal first.
okay,
Okay, fine. I'm not. If that's a motivator, and if that's a motivator, and again, I want it because I think it's good for me, then go ahead.
Yeah.
Right. The problem is if I like it because you like it. To me it's pretty clear that he keeps saying your friends, his this, his that. I like it because it's his. It makes him happy, so it's gonna make me happy, or because I'm jealous. Then don't judge your life based on the other person. The other person may need it, it may not need it. You figure out. You do some internal searching. Say, what do I need to be able to live a wholesome life to make me happy, so I can serve God, so I can do good in the world? And maybe a motorcycle, maybe a yacht, but not because my neighbor has a motorcycle.
mhm,
Maybe it's also saying that we each have our mission.
Right.
And pursue the things you need for
For your
personal
mission, right.
And don't want somebody else.
Right. Because
It's not for
they
you.
may or may not need it for what they need.
Mm.
So don't view yourself through the lens of the other person. That doesn't mean you can't be ambitious. Doesn't mean you can't want a nice object. But if you say, I want his object, that's the emphasis. His cow, his maidservant, his manservant, his house. Right? Okay, we're going a little off topic. Go ahead.
One question up to the point of, so if the brothers were thinking that this now is a legitimate
Now they
prophecy.
start getting nervous. Yeah.
So now they're nervous, and then they come up with the scheme that they ultimately come up with. Aren't they then through the scheme, not only that they're attempting to kill their brother, but they're attempting
To
to
change,
almost
yeah.
defy Hashem's
In a way, that's what they say.
destiny,
In
what
a way,
Hashem's saying is gonna be.
in a way,
anything
in a way,
that
that's
was
correct. They say, when they try to kill him, they say, let's conspire to kill him. We'll throw him into the pits and let's see what will happen to his dreams. Now, if his dreams are nonsense,
So isn't that a big, I mean, from
Yeah.
a,
yeah,
from Hashem's perspective.
you see what jealousy does to people. Yeah. It makes them first of all willing to kill, but on the other hand, also you're right. If they're righteous people and they understand this is God's plan, you think you could stop God's plan. It's almost I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say immature. It's not logical to think you can do that. But when people get jealous, they're not thinking logical. But the verse itself alludes to the fact that they're still haunted by it. They said, we'll see what will happen with dreams. They don't say the dreams are not going to come true. It's interesting. It's a Freudian slip. They say, let's see what will happen to his dreams. Let's see how his dreams we'll kill him, and let's see how the dreams will come true. There's no dreams if he's dead. No, but they sense it's a Freudian slip, but they believe that they believe in the dreams, and they believe it's going to happen. Let's see how it's going to happen, right? So you see that subconsciously they themselves believed it. They did not consciously, but subconsciously, and that's why they make that slip. And therefore, Rashi has a few interpretations of what that phrase means, because it's taken on the surface. It's a strange phrase. Let's kill him, and we'll see what will happen with his dreams. If you kill him, there's no dreams. So it's either Rashi says it's the narrator speaking, it's God speaking, it's the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit talking. In other words, you'll see what will happen to the dream. But the simple interpretation, I think, is that they themselves are saying, let's see what will happen to the dreams. But in other words, they sense Freudian slip, but they sense that the dreams are going to come true, as they did. Okay, let's talk about the dreams for a second, and let's talk about there's 2 points I want to say. First point that Eva pointed out is a very interesting concept, and that is the dreams here. You could say that it's just a detail, but because the dreams are so important in the story, and the dreams advance the ball, they advance the plot, not just for Joseph himself, but really for all of Jewish history, because Joseph's going down to Egypt leads to the fact that the brothers come to Egypt, which leads to the Egyptian slavery, which ultimately to the redemption. So there's a lot of history being affected by this small little episode of the dream. Right? So let's think about the dream. And the Rebbe does something very interesting. He contrasts the dreams of Joseph to the dreams of Pharaoh. And he says like this, there's two differences. The first thing, let's talk about the one difference, it's easier. The dreams of Joseph are moving upward. They start with grain and they go to the heavens, right? So you start from the physical and you go more spiritual. And that's a Jew. You start out and then you grow in your spirituality. You're going upward. The direction is upward. Pharaoh's dreams, what were Pharaoh's dreams? So first he has a dream that there were that there are 7 fat cows, and then 7 skinny cows emerge from the Nile and swallow the fat cows. And we know that that's supposed to be, Joseph interprets it, that's 7 years and 7 years, 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. Okay, that's dream 1. Dream 2 is that there are 7 ears of grain that are healthy, and then there are 7 ears of grain that are beaten up by the wind, and the bad ones swallow the good ones. Okay, you're going downward from living animal, which is a higher form of life, to vegetation, which is a lower form of life. And the Rebbe says that that's the difference in holiness and unholiness. How do you know if you're in the realm of holiness, if you keep growing, if you're moving toward heaven? In the realm of unholiness, they're not, sort of the person is more narcissistic, moving to more and more physical and earthly. So that's interesting to contrast these two stars, these two dreams. So why am I saying it now? I'm not waiting for Pharaoh's dreams to tell it to you, because this ties into the question of why they were jealous. So one way to think about this is like this. There's 2 ways Joseph could dominate them. They said, you're going to rule over us, you're going to dominate us. What does that mean? There's 2 ways they could dominate. They could dominate in the physical realm. You'll be the king, you'll be wealthier, we'll have to serve you, you'll decide when we go to war, etc. Physical realm. They hate it, but they're not jealous. Why aren't they jealous? Because it's not that valuable to them. The second dream is the matters of heaven. Stars, sun and moon bowing to you. But the realm, the arena where this plays out is heaven, is spiritual. So that means that Joseph's spiritual path is superior to theirs. Now they're jealous because now this is more meaningful to them. So this interpretation is actually very beautiful, right? When it comes to physical matters, they hate him because the kid's a little kid, he's arrogant, he thinks he's going to be the boss, he's annoying, more annoying than jealousy. Jealousy means that I value what you have and I want it for myself. They all want to be the king? No. So the first dream, it's not a reason for jealousy, it's a reason for hate. You hate my little brother, he's just annoying me. He thinks he's on top of the world. Do I want what he wants? Of course not. I don't need to be the king. But the second dream, all of a sudden, the second dream represents something that's spiritual. His spiritual path is superior to ours. I remember we discussed this last week or 2 weeks ago, that they were threatened by his spiritual path because their spiritual path, like the path of the patriarchs, was to be shepherds. All the patriarchs, all spiritual seekers, including Moses, were shepherds, because a shepherd, you could be away from society. You're not influenced by society. You have plenty of time to play with your fiddle and meditate and think about the nature and God. And you can just, so you're not influenced by the corruption of urban life and other people and commerce. So that's the spiritual seeker. Joseph is the one who actually goes right into the heart of the economy, runs the economy of the world, superpower of the world, runs the economy, and yet remains loyal to his teachings. So for them, that path is a spiritual path threat. If they took that path, they wouldn't be able to manage that balance. So now they're threatened by his spiritual path, and therefore now they're jealous, because now the superiority that he has, that the dream represents, he has at this point, they believe it. That's what we said earlier, because father's involved. So there's the fact that now they believe. So the first answer was the first dream they didn't believe, the second dream they believe, and that's why they're jealous. But another interpretation is the first dream is about material things. They don't really, it's not that, they don't really want it. They're just upset at him. They're angry at him because this guy wants it. He thinks he's going to dominate us. But the second dream, when you're talking about matters of spirituality, sun and the moon, your spiritual sun and the stars, your spiritual path is going to be superior to ours. That is a threat. And that's going to tie into why they sold him, why they tried to kill him, because we always keep saying this, but up to this point in the history of that family, only one path was chosen. It was either Ishmael or Isaac. It was either Isaac or Esau. Here, they feel if the father loves Joseph and Joseph's spiritual path was so different than theirs, will be chosen, then they're not part of the Jewish people anymore because it's going to be one path. Reality is that once Jacob has 4 children, at 4 wives and 12 children, and that was the whole part of the whole dream where you're going to go to part of the whole dream with the ladder and the stones connecting to it, according to the Medrash. The bottom line is now there's not one path, there's 12 paths. But the brothers don't have the history in the family, they don't understand that. So they see this one path that's completely different than theirs. And they think that's going to dominate. So they think there's no room for their way of serving God. So they're threatened by that. So they say, we got to get rid of this guy. But in any case, the big idea here is they're only jealous of spiritual matters. They're not jealous of the first dream because the first dream represents materialism. You're going to have more grain than us. We're going to have to bow to you to get grain. We don't like you, but it's not, we don't want that position. Nothing to be jealous of. Second dream that represents spiritual matters. Oh, then they're jealous. So I thought that was very beautiful because it just shows you that even though they end up signing their brother, etc., but it really shows you that when jealousy tells you about what you value. Very interesting thing. I'm not going to say names, but I never thought for myself of a jealous person, and I could not get jealous of anybody. I just couldn't. I'm not tooting my own horn. That was just my nature. I'm not that ambitious, I guess. One person comes into my life and drove me crazy. Crazy. I could not handle this thing. I could not handle it at all. And after a lot of soul searching, it took me years. I realized that he has a quality that I want and I don't have. And that's why he was just getting under my skin, because essentially it was jealousy. And essentially you wanted something the other person doesn't have. But again, you only get jealous from something you value. So in some ways, you have to ask when you see I'm getting jealous of somebody, say, what is it? Sometimes it's just, okay, I don't like that guy. But sometimes it's like, there's something that person has that I want. You'll figure out what you really value by what you're jealous of. So according to this interpretation, the brothers didn't value the grain dream, not enough to make them jealous, but the stars bowing to you that represent spirituality, spiritual path. Your spiritual path is superior to ours. That's something that made them jealous because that's what they value. So I thought that was nice.
So why ultimately though does Yehuda become the leader? So we're saying the path of being in the material world and being able to stay true to your spiritual, but then in the end, Hashem changes it to say that that's not going to be the path ultimately.
Right. So there's a lot to say about this question. The short answer is that according to history, both Joseph and Judah, but later on with King Saul, son of Benjamin, son of Rachel's family, precedes David, which is the son of Leah, and also Mashiach, the Medrash. My mom doesn't talk about it, so it's not that well known, but the Medrash says that Mashiach is the son of David that we know, son of David and Solomon. But the Talmud says that before Mashiach, the Medrash says, not the Talmud. The Talmud may mention it, but the codifiers, Maimonides doesn't mention it. So the Talmud says that before there's Mashiach, the son of David, is Mashiach, the son of Joseph. The question is who that is. Maybe it's Joshua, whatever, I don't know. The bottom line is this. The bottom line is it seems that the pattern is that first you have Joseph, Rachel, Benjamin side of the family. They go first. And then you have Judah. So in other words, when you say who's the leader, the question really is not so much who's the leader. It's what quality is necessary at this point in history. And therefore, even if God says that Joseph will be the leader, it doesn't mean for all time. It means for now, in the beginning, when you have to establish. What we need to establish is a certain breakthrough that only Joseph could do. Later, it's going to be Judah. And why that?
So where are we now? Are we supposed to be, we act like we're supposed to be doing Yosef's path now.
So we're not, Mashiach is not here yet. There's still 2 paths. There's a whole Haftorah. We'll talk about it. There's the Haftorah when Vayigash Elav Yehuda, when Joseph greets, when Judah approaches Joseph at the end of, not this parsha, but the end of next part, at the beginning of Vayigash. So it's 3 parshas. And basically Judah approaches Joseph, and that's where Joseph breaks down and reveals his identity. So there's a Haftorah. And the Haftorah says, Haftorah of that week is that God tells the prophet to take 2 sticks, one right Judah and one right Ephraim, which is the leader of the son of Joseph, and put them together. When Mashiach comes, there'll be only one. There'll be one king. So in other words, right now there's 2 paths, and in some sense Judah dominates, in some sense Joseph does, and eventually it will be Judah. Kabbalistically, that's the question of what's more important, study or action. So Joseph would represent, Joseph means addition, to add, to grow, internal personal growth, growing in wisdom, growing in emotion, serving God with love, serving God with awareness. That's the path of Joseph. Judah is submission and action. Action means do the mitzvah regardless if you feel kind. So I ask you, which one is superior? Which one should you invest in? So the Kabbalah ultimately says the ultimate goal is action. That relates to Judah. But before that, you have to try to grow. So in other words, that's the tension between Jewish history, but Kabbalistically, there's a deeper idea here. There's the tension between study and action, between personal growth and action. And action means it doesn't really matter how I feel. It doesn't really matter if I'm kind. Just do kindness. So what's more powerful? So ultimately, till Mashiach comes, till the end of times, you're not going to get a straight answer because they each have an advantage. And that's why when they asked the Talmud, which one is greater, study or action, they said, they didn't answer straight. Only Jews can answer like this. So it's a big debate. What's greater, study or action? What's the answer?
Well, Hillel says.
Yeah, what does Hillel say?
action,
Yeah, so the Talmud says,
As opposed to Shammai.
yeah, intention. Yeah, but listen to this phraseology. Big debate. They took a vote. You know what they came up with the vote? You ready? Ready for the study is greater because it leads to action. They didn't answer the question. They didn't say study is greater. They said that they didn't say action is greater. They didn't say study is greater. They said study is greater because it leads to action. In other words, first you have to have study. Ultimately, it's action. But in the beginning, you must have study. Study is greater because it leads to action. Bottom line is they didn't answer one or the other. You're not going to get the rabbis to acknowledge that just do one. Greater as in just do this. No, you have to have a dance. And even Hillel and Shammai, you need a balance. You need a little bit of both. Question is what's superior. So the bottom line is that's unsolved, unresolved. Only when Mashiach comes, according to the Kabbalah, Mashiach comes, you get the essence of action, because according to the Kabbalah, the essence of God is rooted to the action. The highest and lowest are related. It's in the book of Formation. We talked about this when we discussed chapter 20 of Rabbi Shneur Zalman before he passed away. He wrote a few days before he passed away, the superiority of action. Mashiach comes, we'll see the superiority of action. So ultimately, Mashiach is related to David, which is related to action. Now, if you follow the Judah's lifestyle, he almost always makes the right choice. He almost never has the right intention. We're going to track that in this week's parsha. With the sale, he saves Joseph. With Judah and Tamar, he almost always makes a good action, almost never has a good intention. That's the Judah. That's the action. Reuven, the very nice guy, almost always has the right intention, almost never gets the right action. Okay, it's actually fun, but you can't make this stuff up. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Beth, please. I'm not sure if you want to say.
Yeah, no, I did. Beth is fine. So I just want to go back, I guess it was Amy's earlier question, which is, it is kind of an oxymoron, because if they're coveting the spiritual,
yeah,
then they would have to also be believing that they can't change that.
People are complicated. Beth, Dr. Beth, people are complicated. People are complicated. Even spiritual seekers, you can have, they could seep in arrogance and being defensive and being insecure. So they act in illogical ways. But it doesn't mean that at heart, what do they value, right? I think that jealousy, what the thesis here is, you tell me if you agree or disagree, but the thesis is that jealousy tells you what you value. These people value spirituality more than physical possessions or physical dominance. Does that mean they're perfect? Does that mean they don't have an ego? Does that mean they don't sometimes act foolishly? Of course they do, because they're human and people are complicated. But the question is, what makes them tick? What do they really want? What is their goal? Their ultimate goal is spiritual. They think Joseph is a threat to their spiritual lifestyle. And now the father loves Joseph because he likes their lifestyle better. So we'll go and we'll kill him. If you kill him, that doesn't sound too spiritual to me. Yes, but that's where people are. People are inconsistent. But the question is, you could still say, what do you really value? You could still say you can have both. I think that it's that a person is not a computer. You could say that this person values spirituality, is a spiritual seeker, but still has to deal with his own ego and jealousy and almost foolishness to think that you can change the destiny. But that still won't take away from the fact that what do you rather have? What do you value? Do you value physical might? Or do you value spiritual enlightenment? They could still value spirituality as a concept or as a goal. I cannot be telling you something that you don't know, because you know more than I know that people are complicated. I think, or and inconsistent. I
Yeah,
think
no, I get that. I'm just saying, it just seems like an oxymoron
it
to me.
is logically. It is, yeah, if I see it on the paper, it's an oxymoron. But if I see it in myself, I say, "Oh, this makes tons of sense." In other words,
Right.
yes, but in the human condition, I don't think this is so unbelievable. But and you put it on paper, it just sounds totally inconsistent. Well, welcome to humanity.
But
Right.
because to me, if you define it, it depends on how you define spirituality too.
Correct.
If
So how do you define
spirituality,
spirituality? Spirituality doesn't necessarily mean egoless or holy. Spirituality means, what do I value? Do I value, for example, let me ask you a question. You have two people. One person values cotton candy, in other words, a carnal pleasure, and the other person values wisdom. Does that mean that the person who values wisdom, so wisdom is a little bit more spiritual than a carnal pleasure? Does that mean the person that values wisdom is any less, humble or spiritually developed? No, this person could still be just as arrogant, just as jealous. He can actually kill the person who's competing with him for the Nobel Prize. He could be. It doesn't mean you're a good person if you value something that's more abstract. Now, take that to the next level. So this guy wants wisdom, and this guy wants closeness to God. He wants to feel enlightened. Right? It doesn't mean, because you're a spiritual seeker, it doesn't mean ultimately that you ridded yourself of ego. Now, true spirituality, like last week's parsha, is Moses. Moses, true enlightenment comes along with a lack of ego. So Moses is not going to do this, but it doesn't have to. That's my point. When I say spiritual, I just mean, what do you want for yourself? What do you value? Do you value the yacht? Do you value coming close to God? I value come close to God more than I value money in the bank account. Does that mean I have no ego? To the contrary, I have an ego. I just care about myself. I want what's valuable. To me, what's more valuable is closeness to God. They say the spiritual seeker is also could be into pleasure. This guy gets his pleasure in negative things. This guy gets his pleasure from studying Torah. One guy said, there was a chassid who said that if the sinners of the world will understand how much pleasure you get from praying, they would abandon all those sins and pray all day. Right? In other words, if you develop a higher form of spirituality, a higher form of pleasure, then that's what you want. It doesn't mean you don't have an ego, right? You always talk about this grades of spirituality. You talk about physical pleasure. You talk about something like music or wisdom. So you have I love classical music. Does that mean I don't have an ego? No, I have an ego. My pleasure is a little bit more refined.
So if you're studying Torah because you enjoy the study of Torah.
So is that good or bad? Well, the answer is, the Talmud asks the question, and the Talmud says a person should study, even shaloi lishma, even not for its own sake, because ultimately, because we're talking about something that is as holy as the Torah, from studying shaloi lishma, from the not for its own sake, you'll come to studying Torah for its own sake, because as Chassidus says, the light of Torah will bring you back. In other words, ultimately engage in the holiness, even if it's for a selfish purpose, because ultimately the holiness of Torah will have a refining effect. But if you want to talk about, just because I value a spiritual pleasure more than a physical pleasure, does that mean that I'm spiritually enlightened? Does that mean I have no ego? No, it doesn't have to mean that. Could mean that. Then you're like Moses. Moses was the humblest of men, and he was a great prophet, and therefore he didn't have an ego. But it doesn't.
A good example would be Cain and Abel, because that was when he was jealous because he wanted to be closer to God, and some of the spiritual people who are like artists or
right.
musicians are very arrogant.
They can be very gifted in more spiritual ideas and in the arts, for example. So their pleasures are not necessarily physical and carnal, but they can also be very cutthroat and very egocentric. Maybe even more so. I said that. But the point here is, the question is, what do I value? What I value is different than how humble I am. And according to this interpretation, the brothers clearly value something spiritual as opposed to the grain. Okay. We have 4 minutes left. I want to give one interpretation, which was a very beautiful interpretation on a different question, but this is, I believe, from that Barbanel, and I just love this. This one I love because it just fits so beautifully. The question is, why does Joseph have 2 dreams? What's the problem with having 2 dreams? The problem with 2 dreams is that later Joseph himself says that 2 dreams means it's going to happen immediately. That's why it's insistent, right? Pharaoh has two dreams: the cows and the grains and the ears of grain. And Joseph tells Pharaoh, the reason why you had the dreams twice is because God wants to make this thing quickly. And therefore, basically, he says the clock is ticking right now. 7 years are starting right now. The interpretation of the dreams begins immediately because you saw it twice. Problem is, here he sees it twice. And when does the dream come about? Dream comes about years later. The beginning of the dream is going to be 20 years later. Brothers come to see him. He's in prison for 13 years. Then he becomes the king. Then there's the 7 years of famine. 20 years later. So why you have two dreams? Two dreams tells you it's speed. I don't see any speed here.
It's like your joke.
That's my joke. God's thing. No, but it doesn't work with Joseph. With Joseph and Pharaoh, he says it's starting right away. So in other words, it's your time. What's the joke? The joke is that God says in Psalms that 1,000 years to God is like one day. So the guy comes to God and says, look, for 1,000 years to God is like one day. So for God, $1 million is like $1. So he says, God, give me $1. The God says, no problem, just wait a minute. so that's the joke. No, but we're talking about on human time because that's what he told Pharaoh. So the Abarbanel says something beautiful. The Abarbanel says, you know something, it's not the same dream, it's two different dreams. Two different dreams. And representing two different times when the brothers bowed to Joseph. When did the brothers bow to Joseph? The first series of times the brothers bow down to Joseph is when they don't know it's Joseph. They think he's a king of Pharaoh. They don't know he's their brother. Why are they coming to bow to him? Because they need something from him. What do they need from him? Grain. That's why the dream is that we're all bounding sheaves of grain, and the grain bows to Joseph because, and it doesn't say to Joseph, it says to my ear of grain. It doesn't say they bow to Joseph. It's to my grain. Your grain bow to my grain, which means it's all about grain. They're not here to respect Joseph. They're not here. They don't even know it's Joseph. They're here just for the guy who's selling grain. They bow to the guy who's selling grain. What's the second dream? And the father's not there because the father never came down. What's the second dream? Stars, sun, moon are bowing to, I would expect my star, just like the first dream, it says, your grain bows to my grain. It doesn't say they bows to my star. It says bows to me. In the second dream, they already know it's Joseph. And the father is also bowing, maybe even the mother, the stepmother. So the point here is after Joseph revealed his identity to them, now they bow to him again. Now they know who he is. And then the father also came and also bowed. So now what's happening is, according to the Abarbanel, it's two dreams. It's not one dream happening twice. It's two separate dreams. And therefore, it's not an indication that the dream will happen immediately. Because even though it seems like a replica, with different objects, just like Pharaoh's dreams was a replica with different objects, here we're saying it's a completely different dream. And the subtlety shows you the difference. Here, they don't know it's Joseph. It doesn't say they bow to Joseph, they're bowing to the grain. And here, they know who it is and they're bowing to him. So that's a little bit about the dreams and a little bit about the dreams. And of course, the takeaway is, the most important takeaway, I think, is what we said, that if you want to make sure that you're dreaming and you're aspiring in a holy sense, make sure you go from earth to heaven, unlike Pharaoh, from heaven to earth. Then they've added one more detail. It's 10:30, so I still have 60 seconds or less before it's officially late. The Rebbe said like this, the Rebbe, one interpretation was that, unlike I just said, it's two dreams, it could be this one and the same. For Joseph, for the Jew could be in binding sheaves and in heaven at the same time. Because when we're engaged in the physical, we have a spiritual purpose. So the goal is to be in the field with the grain, and yet to be, so you have two dreams, they mirror each other. They're at the same time, it could be at the same time, two dreams. We're in the field and where are you? Are you in the field with the grain? Are you in the heaven with the stars? Where are you? You're the Jew, 11 tribes, where are they? And of course, the answer is they're both. The whole idea of the Jew is that simultaneously you could be involved in the physical world, yet be connected to spiritual reality. And that's also another lesson of the dreams. So we offered multiple lessons. We should have just tie them all together and review, but we'll do it next week because now I'm a little confused. But no, seriously, there's a lot of important messages from this dream about the idea of what do you want, what do you value? That's jealousy, and the idea of always grow from earth to heaven. And a deeper idea is you can be in earth and heaven at the same time. You can walk on the earth in the field in the grain, and at the same time you're really involved in heaven, because the reason why you're involved in the physical is for a spiritual purpose. And then you have both simultaneously. So l'chaim, we should all do that. We should all grow, and we should all operate in multiple planes simultaneously. L'chaim.
Rabbi, can I just ask you, in 11, it says, but his father kept the matter in mind.
Yeah.
What significance is that?
Shamar. So it depends. You can read anticipate, because that's what Rashi says. Rashi says Shamar is anticipate. So his father really believed that Joseph should be the leader, and therefore he anticipated. So it's almost like an endorsement. The father agrees that Joseph's path is the more compelling one. So it's not, you can read it the way they translate it here. Father guarded it. He waited to see what's going to happen. That's also important, by the way. It's also important, and we'll talk about that in a second. But also he anticipated, he wanted it to happen. Why is it important to know that the father guarded the matter? In other words, remember the matter. Why is it so important? So if you look at the end, as the story unfolds, it's very interesting to see that the father, on one hand, the father thinks Joseph is dead. On the other hand, he mourns him for many, many years. And Rashi has a very interesting interpretation, which says that God created the world, that it's a gzera, it's a decree, it's a fact of life, that the dead will be forgotten from the heart. Doesn't mean you're going to forget the dead, but it means the pain is diminished over time. With commentaries explain, with Jacob, the pain wasn't diminished. Why? Because he wasn't dead. Because Joseph was still alive. Now, if you think your kid, not you, someone thinks their kid is dead for 22 years, and all of a sudden they hear, oh, you see these wagons? These are the wagons that Joseph sent. He wouldn't believe it. All of a sudden, when he hears the decree, now he believes it. So that tells you that Jacob had a complicated relationship with the notion that his son died. On one hand, he mourned for many days. On the other hand, the pain was never diminished. On the other hand, as soon as he got an indication that Joseph is alive 22 years later, he accepts it. So it's possible that this verse is telling you throughout everything, he never let go of that belief. Right? So even when he saw the quote unquote evidence was planted evidence, it wasn't real evidence. They took the tunic and dipped it into goat's blood. So he saw the planted evidence and he thought his son was dead, and he did, and he mourned. But it's not so simple to think that that's the whole story. The back of his mind, he always harbored some doubt. Why? Because he always harbored the belief in the dreams. So without that little phrase, father guarded the matter, it's very hard to understand how his reactions unfold over the next 2 decades. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you get one line here that helps you understand the big picture for later down the road.
Vorspeise.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Just the programming. We're not going to do a class on Wednesday because we have the graduation from preschool, not only from the preschool, but from every grade in the preschool that requires a graduation, in case you didn't know. So we won't do Wednesday, but we'll do Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday in good health. Okay, thank you.